like to do is we like to keep everything exactly the same. So that's one of the big things that we look for is consistency, because it is very easy if you accidentally put a link in it, if you didn't, and then you should accidentally did link tracking, right? So that's where like we really see as a thing. And then one other thing is this field right here. So sending as a plain text is incredibly we find this to be one of the best features that Smartlead has. And I know when we started working with Smartlead, this was one of the things that we specifically worked with them on to make sure that that text, this is one of the biggest cheat codes in the email right now, if you're doing it, is we really like to see having this on. It really can help you. Because what this does is this is like, if you're going through TSA, from an airport perspective, it's like the security is a lot less focused on you, as you're going through you're not going through with, looking tired and looking, something's wrong with you, right? Like this sending emails through a spam filter is much easier if you have this mode on. Now, the downside to this mode is you can't track open rates. We've taken the trade-off. Some people haven't, but we feel that it is when we've done audits, it is mind-blowing how much better campaigns perform if they have this on. So that's another little thing that we look for. So we'll look for send as plain text on. That's one other one. And then another one would be on the AI ESP. Now, this is one I would actually try to go and turn on at a campaign level as well. It can be controlled, I think, at the inbox level. There is a new, I think Smartlead added it, so it is on the inbox level now too. But we like to just keep it on consistently and have the same exact settings across all the campaigns. That will just lead to better results at the end of it, because you'll be so consistent on that and you can measure what works and what doesn't. It's hard to fix things if you don't know what you're doing on the actual, like if the campaigns are slightly different, it's harder to do a control experiment versus like one that isn't controlled. So we like to keep this on. And this is the one that does the warm up in the background while you're sending emails. So it does 100% reply rate on the warm up. And it's really helpful because it actually helps offset any sort of campaign, declines in performance because of other reasons, right? Like copy, or maybe the message isn't hitting. This can offset a lot of that and help. And it's great to keep that on as well. So, and we like to see this too, like this is the one thing here. So let me pause there, Swapnil, if you want to ask any questions, or Mona, but this is just generally how we look at like the campaign structure, and I'll pause there.
Sure. I have a question, Jesse.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wasn't tracking open rate before, but then, I saw a few LinkedIn posts and, people who were using Smartlead who started, showing open rate. So I thought I'll on it for a few campaigns and then compare the results. But you're saying it's better if I off it and then have the setting as plain text for all of them as true, right?
So here's my feedback on open rate. So it's one of those things. It's like if I'm there is probably one factor that could override some of them, that might tell you to keep open rates on. Now, if you're talking about it from a scientific perspective, if your ultimate goal is to get the best performance in the campaign, you would have open rate off. And the reason why is because of the fact that this field here, send as plain text, you can't use this field if you have open rates on, right? Now there's a theory, there's two schools of thoughts, and some of the people that are really, really great, in this space disagree with me completely. But here's the point. Here's what it is. It's a client. So your clients might actually ask you to have it on. Now, I'm also of that, like, hey, well, if they ask you to have it on, why don't you just, at what point, like, the problem with open rates is you can't totally trust it, because there's so many of these new security conscious email platforms that have come out that are blocking anybody from getting any value out of open rates. So you have to exclude those. And there's a lot of like noise there and it could send you down the wrong path. So that's why I turn it off completely on all of our campaigns. we actually don't even allow, like, if customers want it on, we won't send the campaign, unfortunately, for them. So I guess we've, took a long time, but we got to that level of where we could kind of dictate that. Not everybody here is probably going to be able to do that. Your client's probably going to tell you to, keep the open rates on, buddy, if you're going to work for, work with us. But
Mhm.
it's like, it's just not accurate, right? It's just not an accurate metric. It's not because of Smartlead. It's because of Apple has a bot that clicks on all of the emails, and it's not really so it's kind of a lie, right? Like, it doesn't really matter if I email all Apple people. It means I'd get 100%. I could, the right Apple people, I could get 100% open rate, but I'd
Mhm.
have no responses if it was the
Mhm.
wrong, you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's sort of like not necessarily like a, but I've argued with some of the best people that on this topic, people that are like really good at this still. They disagree with me. Of course, a lot of people do, gurus everywhere, but you know how it is. But that's kind of like what we've ran into. So it doesn't really help you. And that one feature, plain text, gets you a lot of, it really improves your reply rate across the board. So
Got
does
it.
that make
Thank
sense?
you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank
Just
you.
one quick
But
question.
like I said, we have some clients that tell us, those ones we don't really work with anymore. We'll probably hand them over to people if they want to. But we just don't do it. I just don't jump for that anymore. Because it's just isn't really the right play. But I'll pause there. Any questions, Swapnil? Maybe one or two
Yeah,
from the
yeah, yeah.
audience.
I actually had one question, and this is something that I want to ask on behalf of our audience as well. Open rates versus reply rates, right? This has been like
Yep.
a debate for really, really long time. Majority of the people, again, like as Mona mentioned, and online gurus as well, right? They say open rate should be your metric to judge your email campaigns on, right? But what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, so like I mentioned on what's really hard about open rates, right, is I, I always look at it like, all right, are you going to use open rates to make a decision, right? And that's the real question. And if you're going to use it to make a decision, then how are you going to address the 30 to 40% maybe growing, and we don't know the speed it's growing, of bots that are clicking on the email before you can actually get to that, right? So what happens is the bot, so Apple will take the email first before it hits your provider, and it will click right through the link, and it'll look just like a regular open. And they're doing a lot of things. I mean, I'm tracking this on another level, and they do a lot of things to obfuscate that it's actually a bot. So you then go and make a decision based on an open, yet you didn't really get an open. So that's what, like, the word open to me means a person opened it. It doesn't mean a bot opened it, right? Like, and you don't know the percentage. And then when I talk to people about this, it's like, okay, well, I'm like, well, then how many people did you email that have this device? And then it's like they kind of like then what it is just becomes like, okay, I've got a higher open rate, but you can't make a single decision off of that number. It's open doesn't mean a person opened it. It means a bot could have opened it, and you don't have a way to exclude that from the number. So that's why I just challenge anybody who would have that assumption that that's a value that you would want. Now, replies, if the person replied to you, you can go with that, because that's that somebody replied, right? So anyways, that's my thing. But some people, usually their clients, and usually it's an insecurity of working with a lot of lead gen agencies who have done poorly at email delivery until they started using, tools like Smartlead, is this is like a big thing, is like they start to perform better and they get the replies up and that. But you're just trying to show off a little bit, because you can get a much higher open rate with Smartlead, because it's a much better tool than a lot of the, the kind of sins of the past, the tools that are like not really working anymore, right? So that's the issue.
Yep, that sounds
Um,
about it.
yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough because your clients are going to want it in a lot of ways. They're going to be like, well, what's the open rate? And then you're like, oh, I'm not going to show it to you because we didn't track it, and we shouldn't track it because it's bots clicking your link. I mean, I don't know. There's a really, it's like I mean, I don't, at this point, you're almost better off just, I'm not telling anybody to go and lie to their customers either about like open rates, but if you explain to this, you actually create a whole nother value around your business model. If you're just going to go show the 85 to 90% open rate that you're going to probably get in Smartlead, because it's easier to get opens, because you're probably better at email if you're using Smartlead than most of the other sequencer companies. That's just it's kind of lame if you ask me. Like, you're just kind of lying, and what you're doing is you're giving up plain text replies. That's the problem. And our plain text is like the #1 feature in the tool. If this is on, like, I would make this true on every single thing and then call me back and tell me how much better you're doing on your email campaigns. I mean, I bet Smartlead has the total stats on this, but it's dramatically higher for the people who have true in this field.
Jesse, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So we're getting a decent open rate, and what's tripping me out more than that is the fact that we're getting a lot of clicks, but we're not seeing those clicks show up as visitors on our landing page.
Yeah, so clicks are really dangerous. So clicks on all levels are.
Who else is having that problem? I saw somebody just raise their hand saying the same thing. Yeah.
Hey, Steve, to be super respectful, we have all the questions popping towards the tail end. We'll
Okay,
just
my
finish
fault.
Mona, and no, it's all good. We didn't mention it. That's on us, so I apologize. Not to be rude, so we'll just wait for it to finish.
Sure.
But to answer your question very quickly, if you're getting the clicks over here but not on the website, that's a bot click. But we will get to it in detail towards the tail end. Cool. We'll just let Jesse come through.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Right.
Yep, perfect. And I could say after too, if there are more questions, I don't mind keeping this going. So anyways, the net of this whole thing is that what you want to try to do is on a group of campaigns, you want to make sure you have the same settings on, and you want to consistently measure against those. So what I would do is, when you're pulling this campaign and you know they're launched, so let's just look at active just to be fair. I would say, hey, let's put them all on the same, and don't track link. I use don't track open, and I use plain text, right? That's what I do. And what you get is consistency, and you know that every one of these campaigns is ran at the exact same level, so you can trust what you're doing. And if you do that over a long period of time, you can build predictability in your email campaigns. That's what I recommend first. Okay, so I'll pause there. Any questions there, and then I'll start to show on reply rates how I look at things.
No,
Okay,
just
great.
move forward, yeah.
Yep. Excuse me. So what I would look at here is, so if you're looking at, you want to get down to the raw numbers here, and this is where I really like Smartlead. You can get this level of detail. So, if you're looking at your replies, right? So if you're looked at like reply count, you would just do, that field divided by this, 5 divided by, and you could have this. So, you're looking at about, really what you want to look at here is the reply rate overall. So, these are the reply rates. What I would say here is that you probably want to do, that's the number of sent. Now, actually, this isn't totally right here. There's actually a different way to do it here. I would want to do it based on the number of leads. It's actually in this, but you would base it on, it's higher than this actually. So I won't show that number, but it's the number of replies divided by the number of people. So if there's 297, it'd be the number of replies divided by that, right? And what you want to see is consistency across the same type of campaign with the same type of offer. Now, some offers you can go out and generate. When people post their stats, what they're not always including is what the actual offer is. Now, if the offer is meeting with your SDR team, hard pass on that one right now, right? Like, that's not a great offer. Like, what do they actually get? Who are they meeting with? Like, like if you're really, and if you're just like, hey, curious to learn more, or one of those soft CTAs, what the person has to do is figure out what you're actually asking for. And that offer is like usually kind of low, right? Like it's that. So if it's one of those types of campaigns, I'd say, a 3 to 5% is probably okay. But hopefully you're over a 5% reply and you're getting some replies. Where I would start to really look though, is make sure you're doing sentiment on every single, like, you never want to have a bunch of emails hanging out in your inbox that have no sentiment on them, because you have to track this over time. And what you want to look at is the number of replies to the number of total people you sent to. So 0 or 1, everybody gets a number, and you divide that out and you figure that out. What I could say is replies, you probably want to be around 5%, right? in that sort of like anything lower than that, your whole ROI strategy is going to probably go down quite a bit. I mean, look, every offer is different. There's some offers that you could sell one of them and that's why it's hard to really tell people what the actual reply rate should be, right? Because there's some people who sell one of it, like, you know, they get 1 out of 1,000,000 and they're still going to make a bunch of money because it's such a high, you know, but so you can't really go that route, right? So that's where I would say, but you want to look at not the total count of email sent. You want to look at the number of people that were in the actual campaign. And where I would look right now the most is this blocked. You want to start to look at some of these blocked ones, because that's when your email deliverability is starting to go down. And that is like a number where I see a lot of people confusing blocked. This is actually because we run email validation, and there's a blocked actually means you couldn't send the email to that domain anymore. Now that'll happen, but you know, you got to be careful there, because you're when you're getting blocked in these emails, like something else is up. Maybe you're sending too many. So what I also look for is, hey, are we sending 10 emails to the people? I mean, I've actually logged into different Smartleads. This is, you know, and this is the right number, 3, maybe 4, but I've logged in where people have 80 here. And I'm like, what are you doing? Right. And what it is they're just going for the block. Now that strategy is going to get you and your whole, you know, everybody blocked, right? Like everybody else that's on your organization. So this is where you got to really be careful right now. And this breakup stuff, like this guilt stuff, like I would stop doing it. I don't think it's going to help you at all. Because if you understand the semantics around how these things are done, if the person gets provoked in clicking report as spam, like they kind of have to just see your message, and if they're not interested, ignore it, or just kind of like say, I'm not interested, and reply back. That subtly is the best situation for you to have. Now, the best is they reply back, they're interested, but subtly, you want to minimize damage on all of these campaigns. Your goal is, because these emails are so obvious to spam filters, and they start to accumulate and they compound is what happens. If you stop getting replies, it just compounds and it shuts down the whole inbox, right? It basically just kills off whatever good you had going. So the replies drop because you're not being either direct, or your offer stinks. It's like, you know, meet with my SDR team 20 times and I'm going to send you the same copy and paste email. That group of people, like, I can't tell you how bad that's just going to keep blocking you. So if you take the reply count and you do that and you figure out these campaigns are declining, I would really that's when you got to start to hold your clients accountable too, right? You've got to say, listen, I cannot keep sending these campaigns to get this reply rate. You're going to have to really dig deep and figure this out with us, right? It's usually a with you offer. I wouldn't do it for you, right? That doesn't make sense in this model. Hopefully you're not doing that. That's pretty crazy for you in terms of like making it, if you're measuring the success on the pod, like I cringe at that, because you don't know their business. You have no idea the audience. You haven't been in that industry. Like, how the hell are you going to go predict that, right? So back off a little bit on the performance stuff and stop. You really have to hold accountability on the negative, and you'll help all of us out, because the more negative emails and spam that people are sending, the worse we're all going to do, right? So you're really hurting everybody if you're just sending for bad, negative. Like, tell a client you're going to have to really work with them a little bit harder if they cannot get positive responses. Get them more motivate. You're going to have to motivate them a little bit to get into this and say, why are people responding like this? Read them the messages and read them out loud, right? That's important. And if you're not getting that reply rate anymore, just shut the thing down. I mean, we've had people in our group come in with like a 0.001 reply rate. And I'm like, why are you still doing this? Like, how is that even, like, how are you getting up in the morning and doing that? Like, you're wasting, your life away. The hell's wrong with you? So like, tell it like it is a little bit, because they're going to need to hear it. You can't, it's not just meant to send as many of these as possible. In fact, you're just going to hurt everybody when you do that. It's just sort of a bad look for you. So, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to come at you, but it's just like, it's sad at this point. I see so much of it that it's just like, stop doing it. Right. But you really want to look at that. And then I think what you really want to do is say, okay, if I got 5 replies, now I need to go have a conversation, on some of these ones that I'm getting a lot of bounces, and, what happened here? Like, you want to be careful in these types of campaigns where you're seeing like 5 out of 45, 24, stuff like that. And then also, I think sentiment analysis is very important. I'm trying to kind of, just because not everyone knew performance-wise was going to be in it, but I would also look at that interested, right? You're going to need some interested. And if you got a client that isn't getting interested responses, but they're getting replies, I'm going to tell you within 2 months, they're all going to churn. If they don't get interested responses, they will churn. 100%. Don't predict that just because of the replies and you're a deliverability expert, they're going to stay on. If they're not getting in, that's how we measure everything. Like, they need interested responses because they've tied a number in their head to what that equals in their business. So if you look through your campaigns, you want to really, anybody who doesn't have an interested reply, you want to go have a conversation with them and talk to them about the negative replies you're getting. Like, hold them accountable, hold yourself accountable to that. And that's what I would say is like a big, I see the best agencies, the ones who are really like charging the most and they're making the most money doing this, are the ones that can really talk to their clients. And, you almost want to charge them for negative responses as well, right? Instead of just the positives, you really have to take that accountability on to where you're working, right? So don't just like roll over like you're, because that's when you're going to lose customers, churn, and you're not going to make any money doing it because they're not going to pay you. They're going to hold back payment, invoices, things like that. So hopefully you can like that. You want to turn off? Yeah. So that's what I would say there on the analytics. Keep a tight eye on the replies and the interested. Any questions there?
Yeah, Jesse, I have a question. If you can go back. So I've never seen this blocked. The block, is it on Smartlead, the stats?
Yes,
Like
it
in
is.
one
It's in
of
the UI. It's just sometimes, it's right here. So it's also in here. Some people don't, they haven't gone through all this. There's some amazing information. Now they're obviously working on sort of like what they want to expose in the UI. All of this information is in the UI, so you can get it all in the UI. You just got to kind of know where to look, but this kind of brings it all together. And that's why I built this, API tool that you could just pull it and get it on a Google spreadsheet within 5 seconds, or like it sends it over to you. But if you look at blocked, so this tells you the progress, right? So this is actually the most valuable part of the analytics right here. And a lot of people tell me they don't know how to get this out of different tools. So this is great. So 743 haven't started, 774 are in progress, 17 have completed. That means these are like mid sequence. And then you want to see the blocked number. The blocked number are people where now you're not able to send them emails. Now that could be for a lot of reasons. That could be they're just blocking people. There's a lot of reasons, right? But if you're seeing those after, because it doesn't mean it bounced. Bounced is different. Blocked is like their server is not letting you send emails to them anymore.
Okay. All right.
So you have to take that into account.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, did everyone know that? I mean, I don't know. Is that sort of
yes, this is really interesting because I never really looked at my stats this way. And Jesse, will you be able to share the link of the software which you have built?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and we give it away. We're not charging for it. So I know there's a couple other like add-on tools that are out there where we're actually giving it away. We just hope people think about us when they're thinking about validation, email validation, and data enrichment and things like that. Like, we try to give everything we can, and then hey, if people think of us to buy other tools that we offer, we have a lot of great tools for other things. But our whole goal is to really help. We saw the Smartlead community as the most affluent, like intelligent group of people for email. So that's why we came into that group and really wanted to help them the most, because we felt we could, because they actually understand emails.
Thank you.
That's why we. Yep. So I think, and I'll be careful here just because there is maybe a little bit, nothing crazy sensitive, but I don't want to do that. The one thing we look for in an email body is first of all, if you're not on plain text, you have to be super careful with email body, because if you accidentally put HTML in there, sometimes it can pass through the system. HTML is like the fastest way to the spam filter. So that's why plain text is great, because it does have this extra like sort of way to do it. And then it sort of tells you like, hey, are my delays set up right? Like, am I on a 3-day delay? Am I on a 3-day one? Am I on a 1-day? What I do is I process everything in here through GPT, and then I have it sort of go through it every time with me. And I use a GPT as like an advisor for our campaigns and our stats. I'm sure Smartlead will add something like this, but it's sort of like, we like to get updated. I like a change log. I like to see what's going on. We like to see trends in the industry of like, hey, this is how many emails are getting replies, that type of thing. But I would look out for email that have a lot of like, if the HTML starts to show up there, we can see a lot of issues here. That's when things get really weird, is if you do that. And then you know, there's the variants, like, you know, there's not a whole lot of reasons to, you know, I know there's the variant product that they have is really, really great, but I haven't seen there's not a lot of great reasons to do variants. It doesn't, you know, each email can be individually controlled. So it's like at the person level, like the variant is sort of broad. So it's like, you know, I don't totally see why everybody needs to do that, because it kind of throws off sort of some of the segmentation. But I think I really do like email body and you know, looking at this, because this will tell me when I analyze this for customers, I usually look for, is the question that you're asking direct and obvious? Because people are not looking at these emails long. In fact, they're mostly reporting them as spam if they don't like them. So you've got to be super careful of like, making it, if it's like under, you know, really short right now, right? Like, but it has to have something in it of value that makes them think you understand what they're trying to do. And if you don't, you're going to probably fail, right? Cold email is hard right now, and everything's hard in life that's worth a lot of money. So anyways, that's sort of that. And then we'll go to the next one. That's what I look for in the sequences, and then email accounts. So what we look for here, I really start to say like, okay, are any of these inboxes having a specific problem tied to that, right? So what you'll notice here is Mona is using an SMTP provider. So of all of the people that I'm auditing today, most of them are on an SMTP. Now, all I can say on the SMTP is you have to watch it much closer. On a like I would say like every 2 weeks, you want to reevaluate it. And I would say if you're using any of them, you want to make sure that you're looking at it from a perspective of like, are you all in on this one SMTP provider, or are you just giving 20% or 30% of your inbox success? The risk of giving them 100% is that they have a noisy neighbor on their platform, right? And V probably knows this. I'm sure his support team is loving this game, but you know, what happens is if you're, you know, wherever you're hosted, right? Whoever's letting you in the door for email, if you have a noisy neighbor and they're partying and they're staying up till 3 a.m. every night, that can blow up everybody else and that can bring down the property value, right? So your emails are not as valuable. You're not going to get in there. So you want to keep a close eye. These things can shift pretty fast, right? Like they will, you could see like really, really, really great reply rate. And then all of a sudden, boom, that next day, you're getting nothing. Now, the only way you're completely on the same network as everybody else is when you own the organization, and you own the organization in Google or Microsoft. Then it's you own the whole block. And if you decide to do something on the block, okay, great. It's be Google and Microsoft sort of blocking you personally. The problem when you start to get on with other customers that are doing this sort of emailing is that group they're going to have to address how they do email warm up. And look, if they're really good at it, they might be able to do it better than you could do it or whatever, right? Like, but you have to really think about the accountability, because some of these places, and we won't even go there, it'll get me, but some of these reputation or these sending companies they're going to work great and they probably have the best intentions. And then all of a sudden, one day, every customer on their platform is completely down. And if that's your business, you know, you're impacted by that as well. And you don't have a lot of recourse, because they have to go deal with the support. It can't be you. And they're not going to have a lot of room to stand on, because they probably were removed or blocked for a good reason, right? So you have to be super careful on these. The best ones are probably the ones to work with are the ones that are, I would not look for ones that are working at mass scale. I'm not a fan of that. Like, be very careful if they are taking on, like, if you see them, like the ones who are a little more expensive, but you're sort of, you get some accountability on like delivery. If you can map it to that and not take a contract on like you know, if your risk is not on the fact that but some of these ones that are like, come spin up 1 billion inboxes and spam everybody, man, be careful. I mean, just be careful, because all of a sudden one day that whole thing could be off. I don't know, V, you have anything to say on that? I know that's a sensitive topic for you, but go ahead.
Jesse, sorry
Okay.
to cut you short. A
Yep.
quick name check. We've got another audit to go ahead with.
Yep. Yeah, we'll go through the next one here.
Also
And then the last thing, go ahead.
Sorry, Jesse. One more thing. There's just one question that I wanted to ask you on the part
Yeah.
of email accounts. Right. A lot of users in the chat have been asking about it, which is ideally with respect to warm-up periods and with respect to the part that you covered in terms of the disconnects, right, and the reply rates falling. What should someone do when they immediately see the reply rates falling?
Yeah, so there are a few things you can do, right? So first of all, you got to figure out. So so you got to say, is this localized to this campaign? And if it is, then you probably have to take a step back and reevaluate, just kind of start fresh. Like first thing I would start doing, by the way, is whenever anybody has this problem, I just pull this report right here and I can usually figure out pretty quickly what's going on. I start to look like, all right, did they ever run a campaign to this group of people before, right? I'll go look, I'll match it up and I'll just say, well, is this weird? Like, is there something, like I'll pull it up on that client, I'll mark that client and I'll say, why is this changing? Or have they always got shitty returns on this client, right? You know, are they always getting bad reply rates because they're just not hitting it? Like, it's funny when you look at the historical information, it's like, well, you've always done poorly with this client. You just haven't noticed it. You haven't been tracking it well. So that's like the biggest thing I start to do is I say, is this historically what's been happening? Now, if it all of a sudden goes, what you gotta stop looking at is you gotta stop looking at everything at a macro level across all your campaigns. Like my reply rates are really starting to drop. Like that usually, I'll tell you what usually happens then. That's usually if you're on one of these like sort of SMTP providers that are sort of have a bunch of people on the platform, and then all of a sudden they get too big for their, you know, whatever, and their boat starts to go off and sink, right? And then all your campaigns are impacted and you have no control over that. But if you're just on Google or Microsoft and you're thinking like, how do I get my campaigns to work and fix them? I mean, you want to look at, is this localized at the inbox? Like, is this at a campaign level? Did this campaign fail all of a sudden? Is it the inbox level, meaning our inbox, like that all of their inboxes are now reply rates are low? Is this those are the things you got to start to back through. And if you back through all of those, you can then say, oh, I see what's going on now, because you have access to the email inboxes, and you can start to see like, hey, did I all of a sudden get a bunch of warm-up declines on that domain? Like that's another thing you can look at. So you have to back it up first and say, all right, have we ever performed well with this client? Okay, let's see what the stats have been historically. What people do is they ignore the past. They're not looking at the data from before, either because they don't know how to pull it, because they don't have the operations team to do it, or they don't know how to get it out of the system, because there's a lot of numbers here and they're coming at you too fast. So like some of this stuff, and I know Smartlead's working on some analytics here, but it's very critical to go back historically and figure out what's going on. And then looking at it so this would have the email addresses in it. It's just I obfuscated it for privacy. So you should look at it as okay, how am I doing on warm up? Did I start to pick up spam here? Like the challenge here is you obviously have a situation where they're kind of offshoring or offloading the SMTP to another provider. But what you want to look at is like, okay, what's my warm up total send count versus warm up reputation, right? Am I starting to pick up, wow, now I'm ending up in spam? I mean, that's one of the best ways to do it. The other thing you want to look at is blocked. If you're starting to get more blocked on the campaigns, that means something else is wrong too. So there's a lot of things, and I know they're making some big improvements here, but there's a lot of things coming there where it'll help you predict if these things are going wrong at an inbox level, at a campaign level, at a all your inbox level, right? That's like your provider, right? Those are some of the decisions that are going to have to be made, and hopefully that answers your question, Swapnil.
Yep. Yes, it does.
Yep. So the other biggest thing is that, and I know we're all like, I'll have a little bit of bias here because of just the fact that I have an email validation product, but one of the things that really, really, really impacts everybody, if this is going to sound really simple, if you want to go find a way to use valid emails only to start these campaigns, right? Now you can do catch-all verification after, right? I think that's a great idea. But what you want to do is start with valid only. And anybody who isn't telling you 0 or 1 if it's valid or not, what a valid email means, the status is that it would be valid, unknown, catch-all, or bounds. I mean, invalid, sorry. Invalid. So valid and invalid are the two that you really have to look at, right? The catch-all and the unknown, isolate those on another side and wait on those for now, right? Like what you want to do is this first campaign you run for a client, don't send any to unless they force it. And there are reasons to do it. And I'd never send to invalid. I mean, that's just stupid. But always, you know, if they're like, well, we have to get to this audience for a reason. Okay, great, fine. But you better use like a tool that sends an actual email to check if that email is good or not. So this is another thing that a lot of people miss is when I do an audit, I'll look at it and say like, all right, well, if these are 50-50 split and you're pulling your data out of like Apollo or Zoom Info, but you're pulling the ones that are like likely to engage on Apollo or whatever. I don't even know how Zoom Info does it. It's funny because they own an email validation company too. So it's like, they should figure that out. But if you pull those and you're not, if I pull this is pretty good numbers, right? The best agencies, and I know because there's 300 of them that are using our add-on product, the best agencies will pop in and they'll come in with very, very low number or just a very low percentage on, like, if you were to map this column out, this column in your campaigns, if you want to really cheat the system, and you, by the way, if you want to get the highest open rates, everything in the highest, go right in and just email valid emails to start. Now you're going to come back to me and say, Jesse, I don't have enough valid emails. Okay. That's true too, probably, right? But let's start at the valid. If you've exhausted all of that and you've got the client thinking that way, that is the best way to do it. And that compounds. When you start introducing the catch-alls, which is something you should do, you should learn how to do that. You don't want to pay this. You want to pay, you'll pay a different price for catch-all email verification. And you should. If you're paying the same price, you're doing it wrong. So there's tools out there that say, oh, you know, and what they'll do is they'll say like, you're paying the same price for all of this. Catch-all is a different cost model because of the way that it has to be done. Now, the most accurate catch-all is obviously going to be the ones that are doing, that are actually emailing the person. It just takes too long for me, like personally. I just don't like to wait that long. So there's an in-between there where they're using a sort of either a scoring, engagement, or database that they have. And that group could be very valuable to you. You know, you just have to figure that out, but worry about your valid emails first. And if you just optimize your campaign, so you're sending only to valids and you have plain text on, those are like the two takeaways today. Have plain text on and send to valid emails. Like, it sounds obvious, I know, but if you do that, and it really mitigates a ton of risk. Then it's like, hopefully you didn't go and work with like some XY reseller that's like got 900 million cold email clients and spamming everybody. You know, like that's another thing you want to watch out for, right? Those types of groups, the ones who are selling like the, 50-cent inboxes, special Friday, whatever. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff you want to do. So I'll stop there. We'll go to the next one, but Swapnil, any questions?
No, all good. Mona, do you have any questions before we move on to the next audit?
No, I asked all my questions. Thank you so much, Jesse. A few action items at my end. So I'm going to realign the settings for all my campaigns. I think that's one. And then plain text and valid. These are the two action items at my end. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, great.
All right. We've got a second lucky winner coming up. We've got Aviv. I'm just going to add you to the spotlight. And there you go.
So big opportunity. This is great. One of the things I do really like here is so if you look at his campaigns right away, everything is sort of running at the same test here. And what that means to me is that there's, he's running all of the same settings on all of them. What's good about this is you're going to be able to figure out what's going on in all of these. It's much easier to figure out when you have all these settings the same, right? You want to make sure you have that going, and then, that, and then, good spacing here. I mean, like, this isn't, as long as this is over 10 minutes, but it's like, you've got to look at this stuff and make sure that you have it there. And then also another thing I noticed, this is actually what I see in a lot of the best, unless they're trying to get some other metric, like there's some agencies that are like, we're going to go out and get the highest open rates because they think they can stay longer. But I think that's a short-sighted strategy. What I really love here is he's got the plain text on all of them. So if you pull this up and you have faults on all these, go change this and then call me back when you're making way more interested responses and you're doing way better. Like this is awesome to see this. Like I like to see this, there. And then obviously like good consistency has the same settings. So that means he can measure this properly. This is like the foundation. If you go into this report and everything is all different, yeah, that's going to be a problem for you because you're not going to be able to measure these campaigns very well. You're going to have problems figuring out what actually is the problem. And then you're probably going to call me, and I don't do consulting really. So, it's just the way it is. Like right now, I see a lot of people, they just don't have this consistently set up. You could tell that here he has it set up perfectly. So these campaigns are going to be able to be much easier to figure out what's wrong because you'll be able to look at the change log and see what you did wrong. So that's the biggest takeaway I'd say right there. Aviv, anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, I almost never track open rates just because I feel like any tracking mechanism, you're basically just telling the email service provider that you're using a sequencer. So that's just
it's pretty
my
obvious
logic behind it.
Yeah. We're all about ourselves and it's hard to get away, but these email providers, these people are pretty serious about like, you look at like these big, ransomware and all this other security stuff. Like don't like they're going to block you. They see these patterns. These patterns are so obvious. Like don't put it like, hey, you mind if I send a link? Like don't play around with it, right? Like just play the system. The system game will work every single time if you do it right. Get off the cheapest inbox of the week, get off that one, send plain text emails, have a really, really strong point of why you're emailing them, have some conviction that you're the best for that, what you're doing, and hopefully they have that problem. And maybe even mix it up with some real relevance and triggering and get that going and get that there. But what you want to look at is then sort of reply counts. Now, reply counts will change over a period of time. And what I would look at is your total exposure. So I would say, good job that there's only 3. I would not go more than 3 right now. Think about it this way. If somebody gets 4 emails from you, if they're not interested on the first, do you think they're going to be interested on the second? How about the third? The fourth, they're going to block you. Go look at your reply. The people that I talked about this and challenge it, I say, go look at your 4th and 5th email reply rate, go pull that data and then come back to me and tell me I'm wrong. You're going to feel really embarrassed when you come back to me because you're going to realize all of your replies came on your 1st, 2nd, and maybe 3rd. I wouldn't say it's a high probability on your 3rd. It's your 1st and 2nd. Now, go look. I'm telling you, go look. You'll hate me for it. You're going to hate me, and that's fine. But it's okay. You're gonna feel better when you get this fixed, right? So stop spamming people, number one, and then also when you're doing these total count things, look at the number of people you emailed and look where they're at. Now, blocked emails can come at a lot of other reasons too. So if you are on a central provider that has a lot of other cold emailers, you want to start to think about that. But I'd say there's 27 interested people here, right? This is a huge, this campaign produced an incredible value. And if you price this well, and these interested are truly interested, and you can rely on these stats, this is a good campaign. 27 people is a lot, and there wasn't a lot of input here. Right now, they should be paying to get this result on an ad platform. It would be incredible. This campaign would cost $50,000 on an ad platform. So keep that in mind. You got to be careful. And by the way, if you're doing all this, you don't pay performance. I mean, please, I just don't understand the people that are doing that. You're doing something so amazing here that why would you ever take any crap from anybody on this stuff? This stuff is hard to do, right? Don't undercharge yourself and don't work with the clients who won't pay you there, right? The ones that want the interested, they want to work with you, they want to build it, you like them personally, your team likes them, those are the ones you want to work with and build a business around. And look, they are going to churn. I will tell you, 3-6 months, they're going to start to ask questions, right? Because they're going to think it's all automated, right? That's naturally what everyone thinks. And it is really. So you're going to have to be careful there, right? You're going to have to kind of hold on tight. But there will be churn and people will leave your program, but a lot of them will come back. They might run a new campaign somewhere, right? They might do something different. So you got to be thinking about that, but you already got 7 interested and you still have 7,000 left. You're going to get a lot better here with this type of stuff. And then, look, occasionally we've all ran the bounce ones that have the higher bounces, but when I look at your leads and I see pretty much every email is valid, I could tell you this is just the last 2 campaigns. I'm like, yeah, this is going to go well because you're sending valid emails to people. They're relevant. You've sourced the audience. You've got that. The message is plain text, which helps a ton. And when you come back, you're going to be a lot happier. And this is the kind of thing I would look at there. I'll go to the other one. I mean, look, the copy, I'm not going to get into the copy stuff. That's not necessarily my area of like expertise, but what I would say is, I would say make sure it's plain text and you don't have a bunch of HTML in it. We'll keep this kind of technical more than anything. I like to separate the black and the white here. So the biggest thing here is, looking at that, and it's all Outlook. I'm assuming there's probably a reseller here or something like that. But what I would do is I would just consider the fact that, hey, you're getting the replies. You're under the 50 a day per inbox. You aren't getting blocked right now, right? You're not landing in spam count, right? Those are the other things I would look at. But you have to look at this data. And if you just ignore this, like a lot of people do, you're just going to keep churning people. You're just going to keep doing that. You need to kind of stop everything and then fix it. I know it's at 30,000 feet and it's growing, and I'll stop there and I'll take any questions. But that's basically it. Like, the stuff that I would be auditing here, I'd be looking at the breakdown of the campaigns. It looks like consistency here. You can measure everything. It's all the same. It's clearly like you go at it in the same scientific approach every time. So you can come back when things aren't working. You can then actually work with the customer because you've removed all the other possibilities, and you can show them, hey, this is what we see across all of our campaigns, and they're going to be much more comfortable working with you because you probably can help them, and you could probably do that. Now, when it's all different everywhere, that's when it's going to be hard to really prove to them that something's wrong. And these benchmarks and this data is your most important valuable asset as a lead generation company, because you have this information and you're the only one who knows how to do these campaigns, and you'll get better over time. This data will compound and become your value in your company is going to be just the activity that goes on in these campaigns. So anyways, that's my
I've got a few questions also. Thank you, Jesse, for that, and thank you, Smartlead team, for hosting this. Just like thinking about different ways to add additional layers of deliverability, like how important is it to always be changing your sending time intervals? So like, maybe one day do 20 minutes in between each email that's being sent, and then another day doing like 25, and then just like kind of randomizing it every day. Does that help? Also, how much of an impact does it have when you're emailing multiple contacts from the same domain, the same company? So let's say you have a campaign and there's like 10 contacts from the same company. How much of a difference does that make? Maybe I'll just start off with those 2 questions.
So first question, as long as the minimum is on, you're probably going to be fine. I mean, so I wouldn't worry too much about the
randomizing it.
The sort of throwing them off. They're going to catch that. If they wanted to build something to catch that, they would. I mean, I'm just thinking about them in terms of like what they can track, right? When I say them, I don't mean any, and Viv had a great blacklist thing. Like you can kind of ignore that stuff. You really want to look at what Microsoft and Google are doing right now with your emails. And that's really what you want to know. And that's going to come in the form of replies. So what you want to look at there is you want to say, basically want to look at like, do I have the minimum on? Right.
Right.
Is there that? I mean, Smartlead's going to do the hard work of randomizing that for you. So you don't necessarily need to kind of handle that yourself. What you do want to do is have the minimum on. If you don't have the minimum on, or you're starting to like try to get under the minimum, send more, like just don't do that. Like keep them spaced out, these inboxes need to look very much like a human sent these emails. And that's how you're going to get the best rates. And then the second question around, what was it again? It was around
emailing multiple contacts from the same company, same
so
domain.
This is a risk. So this one, you bring up a really good point. So this is a huge risk. So if you're emailing two people in the same day and they both reported as spam at the same company and they have a big email provider like a Proofpoint, Mimecast, any of these, or they have like their high-end Microsoft customer using all their enhanced security products, good luck getting that third in. And not only that, that system is going to phone home as fast as possible, and yeah, that's going to be a problem for you. So you want to be very careful on how many people you email at the same company, because two people. I mean, I actually saw, this is the one that I actually saw an organization that had their entire org blocked because they emailed 32 people at Honeywell. And their IT department was like almost cry, like they couldn't figure out like how the hell did we let this happen? And it's funny, they went right back to it, but that's the way anybody is in life, but I guess. But it's just so bad to get two reported manual spam reports at one company in a day. I just can't emphasize enough, like those manual spam reports. If you just send your emails, like you think about it with the mindset of, with your clients, it's almost the whole system you build has to be around, instead, and this is going to sound controversial, but instead of getting positive responses for them, try not to piss off the person that you're sending it to, and being direct at the same time, which is a hard skill. That is going to actually improve the chances of you getting actual real responses, which is what you ultimately want. Everything else is noise. You want a person on the other end to actually respond without you spending any extra time doing it. That's how this thing scales to the moon, right? If you figure that out, that's what's going to change your trajectory as a company, as a lead generation company, is how do you get that to happen more? It's not about open rates. It's not about bragging to your customers or pushing it on social media. It's not about any of that other stuff. It's only that one spot. If you can figure that out, you're going to you need to get a response so you can hold the customer accountable to their own messaging. If you don't get a response, they're going to be sitting there looking at your open rates, click rates, all the other bullshit that they're going to look at. If they go off the program and they force it and you're contractually obligated, I would think about canceling the contract as soon as it's done. I would think about that possibility, and I would explain to them, like, when you're up front, I would say, listen, we have a very serious systematized process that we are very much accountable to. And we find if you run campaigns exactly like we tell you, you're going to learn from the market how they feel about your product or service. And if you don't run them the exact way, we can't help you. Right. And the exact way means, I'm not saying you're going to write the message for them. I'm not saying, like, whatever it is, you just have to have it run the same way every time. So you have a way to measure when this thing goes wrong and 15 days in, they're about ready to cancel. You have to have a strategy to bail them out. And if it's, hey, and what you need to do is review the negative responses with them, right? You need to make the negative responses felt. And that's what you need to do. You need to say, listen, this is what this person said. You said it's a target account. Why would they respond so negatively here? What do you think it is? That's when you get the most out of this program. And that's when they're going to get the most, is when they're forced into thinking, right? And that is what you're going to want to work with clients who can actually do that. So I'll stop the rant there, but that's kind of like what you want to do.
What about also the way you upload your lead list? Like, I've heard that you don't want to do it in alphabetical order. You want to randomize that. If you're emailing like Adam, Anthony, people that, like, if it's in alphabetical order, does that have an impact as well on deliverability?
No, it shouldn't, because you're going to be, so the inbox rotation is an account. So the way that Smartlead works, obviously, is you have one inbox sending one email, you have another inbox sending another, so you shouldn't have any impact there.
Okay, interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think you'd have any impact there. We definitely, it doesn't really matter. I don't think that matters at all. So this is the other thing, by the way, and conveniently, there's been times where I've been tempted to make something up and just say, like, this is the right answer, but it's such a hard, but you look at that as, like, I've seen, there's been some people who have, like, stretched it a lot further than it is. And I'll like, because I know, the inner workings of these deliverability systems pretty well, just because I've focused here. But, when I see stuff like that, I'm like, oh God, this is like somebody who just wanted to be remembered, right? like some tactic, it's like the same one we used to see out there. People would say if you put panic in the subject, you get your open rates up. Well, I mean, okay, fine. Now the bots are going to click on them, but like I mentioned, but the open rate thing there is like now there's concerned about the email. It doesn't mean you're going to get a better outcome or whatever, right? That's the kind of thing you got to be thinking about. Is like, what are you really trying to get? You're trying to get a reply that shows what their sentiment of your offer is. And if you get that reply, that's the starting point for you to work with your clients. If you don't get the replies, you can't do anything. Your client can't do anything. And that's probably why they're calling you, actually. Because if you're using Smartlead, you probably understand the concept. I mean, that's the good thing. I know this audience understands the impact of email deliverability more than any other. I wouldn't even be on a call with any of the other providers because of this reason, right? Like this is the one thing that I saw in Smartlead from day one, and the commitment there, and building a product around that. Like that was their commitment in the beginning, and that was what I wanted, what I was aligned to. That's why I even started using their product. So I've tried all of them. I've tried every one of the products out there, and I just use Smartlead. It's pretty simple.
Cool. Makes sense.
Anything else, Swapno?
No, I think that's about it. I think if you can just quickly cover the last section so that we can open up for Q&A. There are a lot of folks who want to ask you questions.
So the last section is just, hey, do they email valid emails? One or two invalids can get in there, obviously, no problem. But I would say if you see valid here, what I see, there's companies that are doing this catch-all game, and it's just like the only time I say go catch-all, which you should be emailing catch-all emails eventually, it's when you start to run out of valids, or the catch-alls are ahead of priority. But don't go out there and just start. And also, don't buy email finders that are giving you, if the status of the email is valid email, and then you verify it with a validation tool, like use the Lead Magic validation or something like that. If you go and validate and they gave you 5 invalids or catch-alls and they said it was valid, that's the wrong answer, by the way. And I've challenged a lot of the founders that have built those tools. I'm like, that isn't the right answer. You should never give somebody, you should give a different status called like, it's a catch-all, but it's got, we've found it in another way, probably a database, probably people chip and one of these other methods. That's how they've done it. And they should be kind of upfront about it without getting themselves in trouble, because they've, now it's a GDPR and, issue, right? It's obviously it's in a database somewhere. So, but that's the point, is you have to really hold them accountable. If they tell you it's a valid email and you go and validate it and it's not, that's the wrong answer too. That's what I tell them. And they don't like that, because they're like, well, go email them. No, I'm not going to go. Why would I want to go be a crash test dummy for you? Right? Like that's not the right move. So that's like the problem. You got to be careful. There's a lot of sneakiness in this like email finding space, like a lot of it. So be careful there. All right, go ahead. Yeah, any questions? I can say a little bit later, so just keep them rolling if you have any questions.
We're going to check. Aviv, do you have any questions before we jump on to the Q&A for the other folks on the call?
That was pretty much it. Just
like do it. You can put this here. You can put your email and API key if you really want to go do it. We did build the workflow for that, so I'll send that over if you guys want to. Anybody can get the audit themselves, process it, do it, put it through GPT like we do. When we do ours, and we just get updates all day to know what's going on. That's what we do.
What was the URL for that one?
I'll drop it out in the chat here. And
Okay.
Now I will tell you it's a free tool, and if it breaks, I will not be. Don't come into my support chat unless you're a customer for the other products that I have and start asking about the free tool. I will definitely ignore those. I ignore all of those support questions. Anything that comes in with a hey, and we are very clear on that's a free tool. So sorry, I just want to be, that's bootstrap founder of me here, right? But that's the goal, like if you come in for support on a free tool, sorry, can't help you. And thanks to my team too. Yash on my team really helped me put this together. He's awesome. He helped me put this together pretty quick amount of time, and we got a really good process for this. And but yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aviv. Cool, folks. Just going to quickly explain to you the process for asking questions. On the bottom right, you have a section for React. Please raise your hands. Andy, always with it, like super fast. But yeah, raise your hands, switch on your video so that I can spotlight you. We're going to limit it to one question per person in order to respect everybody else's time as well as Jesse's time. So yeah, let's get started. One moment. Cool. Andy, could you please, unpause your video so that I can spotlight you?
Hey Swapnil, hey Jesse, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, again.
So thank you guys for this awesome webinar. Just want to refresh in your thoughts on Gmail versus Outlook debate, which now is better performing for you, and what can you even use Gmail for contacting like large companies like big enterprises?
Yeah, so Gmail and Outlook, that's sort of like Pepsi and Coke, depending on where you go. One of them is going to be more popular. You could definitely use Gmail right. So Gmail is going to work better in Gmail, of course, right? As you know, there's a bias against. So what's really come out of everything is like these companies, when they're building their scoring models to determine if you're in spam or not. There's two costs. There's one of like the operational cost to you, which Gmail is increasing here, right? They're getting much better at sort of detection and sort of what they're doing. And then also like, validating these stupid SMS codes that you need to use. That stuff is starting to come a little bit faster. I'm noticing Gmail's a little ahead of Microsoft there, which is good. But I also think there's a lot more startups using, from our data, and we've checked every MX record on the internet. We've seen a lot more. It's definitely a little bit more geared there. Now, that's not every case. We usually, like, when we're going to go in with a plan of attack for the customer, we'll look at, all right, who do you want to email? What are the companies? Great. Let's find out what MX records they're using. So we give that. And when we know that, that's usually one, by the way, that's going to impact your success on these campaigns probably more than anything. It's the weirdest thing, but I'll tell you right now, if you're scanning their MX records and you find out that they're all on like Proofpoint, Mimecast, and like some of these other tools that have really, really high bar to get in, good luck. Because that game is going to get really old fast. If you need high, like, that's where that game gets really old. But Google versus Microsoft, I think there's operational changes is what's happening. So people who are talking about it, generally what I'm seeing is they're frustrated because of a couple of, they have like, either they've had like a Microsoft issue with a panel or something like that, or they've had like a Google issue where they're getting locked out of their Google account, or Google's kind of cracking down on, what type of codes they use to revalidate and things like that. They're both generally right now, we're seeing about the same level of difficulty. I think lockouts are a lot less on Office, but we're seeing a little bit higher deliverability, but with the campaigns we're running right now, I'm prefacing that, right? The campaigns we're running right now. Now that can all change tomorrow or the next day. You might as well just prepare for every scenario operationally that you have to, and then you don't have to worry about it. Now, if you're with a reseller, that's a whole nother world. So just when I say Gmail, I'm not talking about reseller Gmail. I'm talking about standard working with Google or Microsoft as a customer, that you have access to their support team. If you don't have access to their support team, you can't, that doesn't count. That's a whole, you got to call your reseller. So there's another level there, and that depends on if the reseller is taking on people who are sending poor emails. So you got to think about that. There's a lot of variables here, right? What I would say is spend 70-80% of your time using the regular resellers, or I'm sorry, regular like Google, Microsoft, and have support contracts with them. And then the other 30%, maybe you're testing other platforms. And if those platforms work, great. Build a plan that might get you to 50%. But then if they start to blow up on the runway, you can't just shut down your whole business. And that's what would happen if that provider did blow up. They might be awesome at first, but then they're blowing up, and you're going to want to be careful. You want to hedge your bets a little bit there. So, I mean, right now it's probably easier to set up on Microsoft. It's probably harder to extend with Google. They're very good at like making that whole process hard, right?
Got it. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you very much for the answer. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I'm up.
50-50.
Andy. Awesome.
Put on the disconnect monitor too. That's another thing I check usually is like, do you have your disconnect monitor on? We have like a way to do that in our platform. You can do it for free, or put it on the Smartlead webhook and make sure you're capturing all of the data there. You need to know if these inboxes get disconnected. Massively important right there.
Awesome. We've got TK next. TK, could you just switch on your video so that I can spotlight you? And yeah, you can go ahead.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jesse, for this workshop. And you talked a lot about the advantages of the plain text. I also wanted to ask, can you bring out some disadvantages that there might be? What I have seen multiple times is that in Gmail, for example, if people are using plain text, the longer sentences are like breaking into smaller pieces, and it looks a little bit weird in mobile, at least for me. And I have received myself as well lots of cold outreach, and this is something that has stood out for me, at least. Maybe you can elaborate this point as well about plain text.
Yeah, there's definitely advantages and disadvantages to both things. I think you probably bring up one of the maybe downsides to it, but I think what we have seen based on our data, and this could change tomorrow, I could be the biggest enemy of. That's the great thing. I always keep my self available to new information as the way, like, hey, we got new information here. This is going to change our mind here. We've seen this, but when I've looked at it across the time period, I've seen that our reply rates are much higher consistently. And what we're seeing is we see that, and look, we have everything really like every one of our campaigns has the same exact settings on, right? And if we see a trend or something we want to modify, we are very careful to, just like Vaibhav isn't, changing his API, like he has to be pretty careful when you modify that system. If you got enough people on there, and there's enough people on there that it would hurt, right? If you make a small change, it can make a major impact on something. Now, the mobile thing, like, maybe, I guess that also probably depends on the audience you're emailing. There's probably a lot of other variables there. What's in the copy? What other? We generally go at a certain pace where it does look good on mobile. The longer sentences, we don't even usually write those ones. So I'm not sure if that, but there's so many different ways to skin this. I think I'm not worried about the mobile. I'm more worried about them getting the email first, right? And if you're using HTML or using the rich text, you're probably not only operationally, it's harder because you have to make sure that you get the HTML in there. It's much harder. And I'm not, if you have better data, certainly, whatever. But the point is we're just seeing a much higher reply rate, which is what we're more tracking now. Some of those replies can come not interested, but still, it's like you got to start somewhere, and that for me is the reply rates are it's not even close. And I know, but if pissing off your client, if you're just doing whatever your client tells you, and they're like, well, we only want to do it if you track open rates. At that point, I think you just hand them over the Smartlead service and you run it for them, and you let them do whatever they're gonna do anyways, because you're not really helping them anymore. You're kind of like destroying technology for them. That might be a better model for your business too. That's another thing we've worked with people, and we found that that's a better model. But then when their campaigns fail, we're not going to be there to help them. Like, we can't do anything about it at that point when they've already changed all of our system and they said, hey, we're going to go do this. We're going to go run out. We're going to put a image in that. We're going to put a big video with a stupid play button and a signature that I put my kids in it because I think people are going to like me more because I have kids. Okay, well, guess what? We're out. For that reason, I'm out. I'm not even going to be in that. I'm not going to help them anymore. The only thing I'm selling them is technology at this point. And if they can't make that work, then I don't really have much else to help them with. Charge them on the negative responses.
Awesome, mate. Thank you, Jesse. Cool. Swapna, are we taking any more questions?
Yes, we have time for more questions. I think we can take 3 or 4 more questions. For all the other folks, I know you have your hands raised. Don't worry. I'm going to create a thread on our Slack channel, and you can drop your questions there. Jesse will definitely answer it. But we have time for like 3, 4 more questions. So let's go ahead.
For
Awesome. We've got Daniel next. I'm going to spotlight you. And just one moment. Yep. Go ahead, Daniel.
Thanks, Jesse. It's been super helpful. Learned a lot. I've just got a question around warm-ups, and forgive me if we covered it because I hopped off for 10 minutes. But in terms of warm-up settings, like, there's wildly different ideas on what's the ideal reply rate for warm-up, what is the ideal max amount of warm-up emails to send per day, and what is like the ideal ratio of warm-up to cold emails going around.
Yeah, so I think we're doing 45%. I have to go look at our exact, I could share them with the group, but you know, and probably I think we're doing like 45% on the reply to there. And then obviously we have the we're using the AI enabled warm up, which is the one that does the 10% or sorry, 100% 10 emails or whatever while the campaign's running. The thing I would also look for is if you're using a SMTP provider that is doing warm up for you, you have to be careful there, because you should talk to them about that setting, because there's some of these providers that they're doing their own warm up, and it's good that they are. That's actually where their advantage is. So they could probably, because I think Smartlead does an amazing job at warm up, but I think there's an opportunity there for a company to use alternative SMTP and create sort of like an advantage, because they know the right engagement model. Like the best, if there's people out there that could really, really, it's not where I'm going to focus in my life, but they could figure out the right metric there. And you wouldn't want to even have, sometimes you want to be careful on how much, like you should tell them what your Smartlead settings are so they can adjust their settings on their end, because they're probably doing something in the background, or they should be. I hope they are. I hope their SMTP is doing something. If it's not, there's a problem there, right? So ask them about that, right? They should be doing some other warm up on the back, right? There's different ways to do that, and without going into like exact way to do that, like I've done a lot of this stuff. The settings are like, we do like a 45%, and then we use the AI enabled for 100%, and then it shuts off like while it's running, but then it's like it spins back up when it's not. Got to make sure the AI thing is on, and unless your warm up company, unless your SMTP provider says no, don't turn that on for some advantage. I don't know why though. That would be hard. That would be a hard sell for me, because I would want to know how many what their replies are during the campaigns and what their strategy is. And I don't know if these warm up companies are monitoring, like, I don't know. Admittedly, I've avoided a lot of the SMTP stuff, because if the second I get near one of them, what happens is the masses go use that product, and then they come to me and they're like, hey, it doesn't work. So I just don't know. I can't stay close to these reseller or sort of SMTP delivery. It's one of the conversations I completely avoid for this reason. I just can't endorse any of them, really. Even the resellers. I'm not saying they don't work. I'm just saying I can't endorse it, because it'll hurt, from like someone's going to go try it, and then I'm like, shit, like you just blew up your whole business. So that's what I would tell you on the settings is just be consistent, measure it. Don't change. Don't be like 45 this time, 30 this time, 20, same settings every time.
People like patterns. Stick to the patterns. That's about it.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that, Daniel. Thank you, Jesse. We've got let's go into the next. Yep.
Yeah. We got one more question. Thank you so much, Daniel. Just give me 1 minute. Yep. Prakhar, I am spotlighting you. Go for it.
Preeti has a question actually.
I just wanted to quickly ask what the setting that you mentioned while you were showing Mona's stats was. So you showed the send us plain text, and then there was another one that said enable AI ESP. I wasn't sure what that was, and if you could just.
Yep. Great question. And that's probably something I should have covered, but
it's a homegrown feature by Jesse. Go for it.
Trust me, some of these features, I worked closely with it, and I held them very accountable to these features. Like I wanted them to work exactly like I was doing it, and they made it work. So that's why a lot of really, really good, that's why working with Smartlead has been great, is they hold it accountable. Let me see if I can show it really quickly. It's just the it's okay. So when you're setting up the campaign, maybe this software can put the instructions out, but it's AI enabled warm up, which is the one that sends emails at a different warm up pace while the campaign's going. Otherwise, warm up is off, right? So what you want to do is turn that on, AI enabled warm up, right? That's in there. That's what that is. And then the other one is plain text. Now, the disadvantage of the plain text is you cannot send an open or click track. So this is where the argument comes in, is that people who really love showing off open rates will start to challenge, or like there's like you can't use open, because open rates have an image, which is an HTML. And as you know, plain text has no HTML in it. So this is where it gets tricky.
Just to add on Jesse 2 point, just to confirm, sorry, I didn't catch your name, but you were asking regarding the matching feature, the ESP matching. Was that what you were curious
I
on?
was just asking what the setting was for the
Okay,
AI
cool.
enabled.
All right, easy. Let Jesse handle it.
Sorry, is it the same as auto adjust warm up?
This is the plain text.
Yeah.
That's plain text. Now, what you're going to find is you can't do, you're not going to be able to get, you're not going to get any open rates. So when your clients come into you and say, hey, what's my open rate? You're going to have to tell them you don't track that. Now, I would love a little feature where it just takes it out of the chart, the dashboard. I'm sure that'll be there at some point because I don't even want to ask you about it. But because it's such a myth anyways that these open rates are the real deal. But anyways, let's not go there again because it'll get me fired up. But it's but then I think what you do there, then you have on the AI response pattern of, you know, that I think is at the email level now, right? I don't want to show, yeah, I should just stop sharing here, but there's an AI, there's one under email accounts. You can turn on the AI warm
It's the auto adjust feature, Yeah.
Okay.
And there's the AI matching is the other one, and turn those on too.
Just to jump in very quickly to help Jesse, the whole concept of that is very simple, is to what Jesse said is consistency. So when it's part of a dormant campaign, it will just adjust that to match the sending volume. But the other thing people don't know about is if your reply rates are low during a live campaign, it will actually boost up your warm-up reply rate to sort of offset the lower reply rate in a live campaign. So just that's the whole vibe behind that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
All right, Swapnil, back to you.
Awesome. Yep. Thank you so much, Prakhar. And I'm going to remove you
Great
from
question.
Cool. We have 2 more questions. Jesse, do you have time to answer 2 more questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's go for it then. Cool. Awesome. Bro, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Ruan. I hope I am. I'm so sorry if I am not. Let me just add you.
No, good, Swapnil. That's good. So Jesse, thanks. This is great. So one thing we've been testing out, we use a lot of images, and I know HTML shouldn't be using it, blah blah blah. But like conversion rate on that campaign before Gmail, you know, kind of dumbed it down or just start blocking us. It went from like 10% conversion rate now to about 3. So then, you know, what we're testing now is trying to get them to open the email first and then use the image because it's like personalized and, you know, we just see it. I know reply rates, etc., but like we're optimizing to conversion rates. So just curious, you know, from your experience, is there a way to cheat the system, you know, because any thoughts would be helpful.
Yeah, so it's tricky. And I don't always say like, in fact, there's reasons you may want to do it. If you have something so compelling in your image, if there's something in that image that could get somebody.
Well, I got my other ID badge, but I got my ID.
Hey, we meet that.
Hold on.
But here's the thing: is like I'm pretty upfront with people too. I'm like, hey, if you got an image that's going to go convert somebody to being a customer, and there's something in that image that is like so dramatically important that that person on the other end is going to convert, sure, yeah, totally. Like you got to take. I like the experimentation route that you're taking. You're trying it, and you're getting more. You know, you're learning a little bit. What I would say is I'm not like just don't do it. It's crazy, but I just have to think that there's a way. I couldn't think of a way that I would challenge. The only thing I would challenge is that I can't think of a reason to do it. Of like what I couldn't get out that, and or like if there's like an image that's like doing something. I guess I haven't thought about it. There's always a scenario where I changed my mind, but like I just don't think of an image. And then to get around it. So the one thing that does impact images really badly, if you are going to do it, we've done a lot of testing with this, trust me. So like, it's not like I'm just ignoring it and never going to do it. I'm doing it all the time. In fact, if I could find a way to do it, I would do it way more than you could even imagine. That's all I would do is if I could send an image in an email and get through the spam filter. But one way you can sort of like do it is the place that you're hosting the image. Now, I'm not saying put images in these emails, right? You're going to drop performance big time. Replies are going to go way down. Like it's going to be dramatic. And if you don't have plain text on, it's going to be even worse. So, well, not that you can't do plain text and image, but the point is that if you could put that on a hosting provider that has credibility, with, you got to be careful. If it's like a free hosting provider, if it's S3 and it's like, if it's one that everyone's using, that one's probably getting the worst, because that one is, any place, if you're hosting it on Google, everybody has Google. So you might want to host it. If you could host it at like, I don't know where you host that image, but God, if you're at a big company, maybe you have your company host the image somewhere on their domain, right? That pixel or that image carries weight based on where the domain is. So I don't know. I mean, there's just no great way to game it. That's why I don't do it. But like anything in life, the effort that you spend to try to get that image in there is sometimes better spent putting out great content on social media, and you don't even have to do outbound. So,
I just want to add into what Jesse's point is, the host really matters. If you're putting in a raw image, some platforms will do the CNAME for you. So make sure that you're CNAMing the images and it's not a raw S3 link like Jesse said, or it's not a raw Google link. It is custom domain tracked, specific to your domain. So you got to win on that side. Look, Jesse, forgive me for jumping in. Ron, just if it's working for you, it's working for you. I think that's what I'll say. Right. Just
challenge anybody that says they're a guru on this, even even if it's me. It's like just challenge whatever they're saying and try to go prove wrong. Like, and I'm not. That's why I don't challenge. Like, if somebody shows me better information, I'm going to listen.
Yeah,
I like
that's
this.
it. It's working for you. It's working for you. Cool. So until it stops working for you, keep doing it. That's what I say. All right, man. Cheers. Thank you. We got one last one. Last but definitely not the least. Yeah, great question.
And if you find out how to do it, don't tell anybody, because it probably will stop working. Please just call me and we'll figure it out together and let's do it.
Awesome.
I got a couple of those right now. That's fun. All right, keep going. Yeah.
Awesome. Grant, you're the last question. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks guys for taking the time, and thanks Jesse for hanging out here and answering questions long after the webinar. My question is really brief. So I know people talk about using separate domains, separate email accounts. Is there a downside to having, like, how many domains do you want on one Google Workspace account? Like, does each domain need to have a separate Google Workspace account? Or if you have 10 domains on the same, does that hurt deliverability across the domains?
It's a good question. We have not seen evidence. I'm going to say it's very, because I've been looking for this too. I feel like it's going that place, but we currently have not seen evidence that the same workspace matters. Now, do they know? Are they going to use this against you? Yes, eventually they will. 100%. In fact, we've seen some evidence that Microsoft is reporting the org ID of
org
all
IDs.
Of these.
Yeah.
So the org ID is if you go and look, this isn't just me saying it. This is like, go actually look. If you get an email from somebody on Microsoft Office, go look at the show original email campaign or the receipt. Look at the official message and look at their org ID that's in there. Now, remember what that's going to also impact if you have a reseller that's on Office. Oh my gosh, you better know every single person sending emails on that system, because if one of them accidentally, which I saw last week, sends 5,000 emails out to 80 people, the rest of that group is going to be impacted. So you got to be careful there. We've seen more evidence of this, and this, I don't usually say this, but on Microsoft, it looks to be like Microsoft is giving away all of the org information for all of your campaigns to everybody on both platforms, right? And obviously they know about it because they're hosting you, and Google knows about it too. So Google is watching, and I'm sure Microsoft and Google work together. Like, I don't think they'd have the same interest here. So they're definitely sharing information, we think, and you're going to have to continue to be smart about it. So the org ID is something you'll want to watch going forward, but right now you're going to get a dramatic impact either way. If you put them all on a Google workspace of their own, probably not. And it's going to be a huge operational nightmare. If you do that, you probably want to go and get a scope from Google to do it. So be careful there. We did, and it worked. But you don't need to do it.
What do you mean get a scope from Google to do it? Because we have been set up workspaces for each domain.
There's a way. So we have we have the Google, we have a Google admin. So if basically it just means you got to have an app that needs Google admin for a reason. We have an app that has it, so we can basically set up. Any admin function you can do if somebody approves us to do it. Another workspace or anything, we can set up domains and do it. So just got to be, you can put an app in the App Store that will help you there. Is what I'll say is if you're trying to genuinely help people get their domain set up right and their deliverability up, you could request the scope for that reason. There's a security process you can go through with Google to do that. This is what I'll leave it at for now. Anyways, yep.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you so much, Grant, and thank you so much, folks. I will be creating a thread on Slack. Thank you so much for joining another Office Hours, and yeah, we're going to see you next week. Have a great one. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Thank you.
Bye, folks. Have a good day. Bye-bye.